All right, TD Finance brought to you by Top Decking. Starting off with Magic, hashtag not your financial advice because we're just going to be looking how the market has been acting up. Especially, I know you guys are very curious with the Commander unban, so we'll see what cards have been affected, obviously, in the marketplace. Starting off with what are you looking at?
Mountain.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so G Bro number two, bring up the mountain on the screen right here. This is the Dragon Eye
Okay.
basic lands in Tarkir, and for some reason that card just spiked up to like $16 last week, and now it's like selling in at $14. Probably because of how hard the card is to get in those boosters. I think this is referring to the foil version, if I'm not mistaken. That's why $700 or 700 pesos for a basic land is insane.
Sure.
But we've seen worse, especially with the unsets way back. So let's move on to the winners and losers. As you can see, losers are still stabilizing in price, especially Ugin, Mox, Jasper. Those are the obvious ones. Even the Voice of Victory is now stabilizing in price. Nothing too crazy, but we'll see. So, but there's some very interesting cards to look at in the winner side. Starting off with Storm Chaser's Talent from Bloomborough. It's going up to $18, almost $18. Like we saw this, went up to like 20, more than $20. Ever since it started to pop off late December, January, when Esper Pixie was running amok in the metagame. Now it's coming back because of the prowess decks in standard. Ever since Corey Steelcutter was printed in Tarkir and now in standard, people have been very popular in using the deck. But of course, the Esper Pixie or even the Orzhov and the Demir variant are still popular in the metagame. People are still using it, but it's heavily used right now in the red-based prowess decks, just because it's very potent when it comes to chaining multiple spells and then just putting a lot of pressure on the board. So, and of course, another interesting deck to look at is the Beans deck. If you don't know, you're playing the Up the Beanstalk, and then from there, you play the big creatures like the Talarian Terror and the Crab, the Eddie Merc Crab. Those are the cards that are your haymakers, and then you just chain multiple copies of them by bouncing them back with this town ain't big enough. So that's why the card's been like on the rise in the metagame. An interesting card to look at in the metagame, in standard, or rather in commander, is Herd Heirloom from Tarkir. Uh, the only text that you need to read is the second one, which is until end of turn, target creature you control of power 4 or greater gains trample, and whenever this creature deals damage to a player, draw a card. So it used to be like trash rare, sitting at around like $1. Nobody cared for it, and then suddenly people started picking up as the set came out, sitting at $6. And the reason for that is Commander. As you look at these popular commanders right now in Tarkir, you got Ureni, Eshki, and the Ur Dragon. Everything is heavily based on dragons. So if you want to get a lot of value from your dragons, of course, you want to give them a chance to draw cards during combat, right? You want to smack your opponents with big dragons. So that's why the Herd Heirloom is looking to be a very pricey card, even though it's not heavily used in standard right now. So definitely keep an eye on this card, especially if you have a copy of those. And up next, we have Shiko, Paragon of the Way. It's a spirit dragon from Jeskai, from the Jeskai clan, already sitting at almost $7. Of course, the reason for that is not just standard, but commander, because it has a very powerful effect. If you can read the card, it exiles a non-land card with mana value of 3 or less. So it could be actually a creature or an enchantment, an artifact. You can like copy it and then cast it again. So that's why the card is looking to be very popular right now in standard and commander as well. It's in Jeskai control. In commander, you have Shiko himself. He's a very popular commander as well. And you have Shiko and Narset unified. So you can actually switch out any of these commanders because it's in the precon decks. So there you have it. All right, moving on to modern. This is the the icing on the cake. Now that we've seen the unbans, You can see most of these cards are basically because of the anticipated commander unbans list. People were very excited, but the biggest winner right here would definitely be gifts ungiven from champions of Kamigawa. So I'm pulling up the TCG market price because there's a huge upswing after the unbans. This is definitely the biggest winner because everyone's very excited to cast this card again in Commander, especially in CEDH. And if you look at the Goldfish standings, it's still sitting at $6. But if you look at the latest sales right now in TCG Player, everyone's buying it for like more than $20 each. And then you already see a even a lightly played foil version is already selling at $140. This card's going insane right now. So if you have a copy of this card, be sure to pull it out again. You could probably make a buck or two in the next couple of days by selling it, or you could just play it in your commander. Definitely pull that out so that people start hating you again. And looking at the sealed product of the week, we're looking again at Foundations Collector Booster. It's still going up in value, even though not a lot are very excited for the cards in general in the set, but rather the collectible versions, which is the fractured foils. So sitting at $480 right now for the past 3 months, just going up and up. As you can see, the most recent sale is at 483. Reason for that is there are a lot of chase cards in the collector boosters. You have the fractured foils, especially the Llanowar Elves. It's the most expensive one. It's at 540, so it basically pays off the entire box itself. And then to couple it up with doubling season and bloodthirsty conqueror, there's also a lot of fractured foils like omniscience and whatnot that you can get as your pull for this set. So if you have a bunch of boosters or collector packs, definitely hide them because they're definitely going to go up in value even further. So what more when we see this price, like let's say in the next year or two, diba? So we'll have to wait and see. But definitely the, you know, well, what do you call this? The what's that term again that I'm looking for? There's this word that I'm looking for. It's what do you call this? The supply. I'm trying to say the supply. Well, I'm just trying to having a hard time saying that. The supply might be drying up as we get to like the middle of the year. So definitely have a look out for some of these collector boosters. If you could get it for a good deal, definitely steal it. Because you can definitely hide it and just keep it and then probably flip it in within a year or two or even 3 years if you're up for that kind of game. So that's the NTG market watch for uh, this week. Let's move on to One Piece card game and Card Fight Vanguard. Woo! I said a lot of words.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason, for another in-depth guide here for Marketplace, or rather Market Watch for Magic. Now it's time for One Piece TCG, starting off with a starter deck card, Gum Gum Mole Pistol. Still very expensive card, around 200 pesos. So its effect is main give up to one of your opponent's characters minus 5k power during this turn. Then if you have a character with 6,000 or more power, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 2,000 power or less. So it can basically KO a 7,000 or less character by itself and then trigger, activate the main effect. It's a very powerful effect that is only found in the ST. And since the ST21, which is the EX Gears, is already, I think, 1 year old at this point. So, of course, this card being used in a lot of red decks is currently the reason why it's very high right now. I just hope for a reprint in PRBO2. Otherwise, I don't know where we will get this card. Next would be Tashigi OPO10-032. Effect: if you have a green character other than Tashigi that will be removed from the field by opponent's effect, you may rest this character instead. A green player's protection card, just like what's his name? The
Rocinante.
Rocinante, yeah. Rocinante. So, of course, it sees a lot of play in green decks and is the only protection card that will survive the upcoming rotation or block number system, hence the current price point. So, I think a lot of people are hoping for new versions of protection cards. Otherwise, this will be the only one surviving come next year. And lastly, here we have the one and only number 2 Bon Cray Bentham on play. add up to one Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. And when attacking, select up to one of your opponent's characters. This character's base power becomes the same as the selected power during this turn. It's around sitting at around 1,000 pesos, or I think it's actually selling here for much more expensive, which is 1,400 per card. And it's because it's currently seeing a new renewed success as Purple Luffy decks, the basic Purple Luffy deck, opted this back again into their decks. Hence, a lot more purple decks are using this once again. Hence, the uptick in price. And next would be Card Fight Vanguard. Here you go, G Bro number 2.
Okay, here we go for Vanguard. It's Crowring Mystic Ravnorog. Despite being uncommon, this card is in high demand because the new deck, Visurger, requires 16 copies of this card to be playable. The Japanese ratios have shown that we get at least one copy per box, which means you need to open at least 16 boxes to get a full play set. One case is like what, 24?
24, yeah.
So that's like one and one half sets for every case. So this is an example of a card whose value cannot be determined because while it is a common, it is necessary for the deck to function. Next here is Blaster Blade. King of Knights Alfred was revealed, and it requires Blaster Blade in the soul to unlock all of its effects. This price is mostly just hype as you really only need one copy in your ride line. So do not buy this price as a reprint has been confirmed in the upcoming Festival Booster 2025. Lastly, here is Opener of Heart Philia. It's a generic draw card for the Dark States Nation, is bundled as a promotional card in the Skyride Volume 1 manga, and presently has no other means to get the card. Currently, people are selling it for more than the MSRP of the manga. So now it is selling for $15. The MSRP of the manga is $12. So pick up your own copy here at Top Tech Games, as the manga might eventually go out of print, and we might not see this card being reprinted for a while. So just like what do you call this? Shenri and Selgaon, these kind of cards are very, very popular and very, very strong. So buy your copies now here at Top Tech Games.
Yeah, all right. We're definitely gonna get those hopefully within the week as they are on their way. So let's move on to the next segment, which is Top Deck of the Week. All right, Top Deck of the Week brought to you by Top Deck Games. We're starting off with Magic Standard, and this is a very interesting deck to look at right now. I'm in love with Jeskai, and what not to talk about then? Jeskai Control. It's a very cool deck to look at because we've got some new cards from Tarkir, which made this deck much more exciting to play. So, what's the breakdown of this deck is you have your typical interaction decks, or rather interaction cards that function as a control deck. The goal of the deck is to just delay as much as possible, like clear the board, like strategically answering every card that your opponent has with your cards. So basically it's almost like a mid-range deck with a one-on-one interaction. However, it's not leaning heavily towards creatures to win a game, but rather some of your very powerful big spells, such as Jeskai Revelation, which is a new card in Tarkir, and everyone's favorite Planeswalker Chandra, Hope's Beacon, because they both synergize with each other as well. If you have Chandra, you can basically copy Jeskai Revelation, and having two copies of Jeskai Revelation on the stack pretty much means the game is over. With having 4 tokens, gaining 8 life, drawing 4 cards, and dealing 8 damage to anywhere that you would desire. The thing about this deck makes it so powerful is because it has access to Stock Up, which is the most popular card selection card in the game right now. It's for 3 mana. You get to look at the top 5 and then get 2 cards and then put the rest on the bottom. Rediscover the Way is basically an extra copy of Stock Up. So this deck is definitely consistent when it comes to card selection. And to top it off, we also have a new card, which is Marang River Regent, which has an omen that says draw 3 cards and discard a card. Later, you can draw the Regent to cast it later, and then to bounce even more non-land permanents or even threats that your opponent has. Other than that, you have your typical removals such as Torch the Tower, Get Lost, and Lightning Helix. You can even use the Helix to even finish the game if the game even drags even further. But you just need a little bit of that reach when it comes to finishing the game. And then you have the counter spells such as Dispelling Exhale, which is a huge upgrade to the deck because you don't have to force yourself to play cards such as No More Lies, which is quite burdening in the mana base. And then Three Steps Ahead is your typical cancel with extra effects, which is super flexible. And then Lockdown is your premier board wipe right now because the metagame is heavily leaning towards the aggro decks with also having a new upgrade from Tarkir, which is the Cory Steel Cutter. Basically, every second spell you make a token and then it gains haste by attaching the cutter to it with haste and trample and +1. So you gotta find a way to deal with the cutter itself without messing up your deck consistency. That's why Lockdown is still quite relevant. Also against the tempo decks such as the Jeskai Oculus, which is the most popular deck right now since Starkir came out. It's playing a lot of 1 drops and 2 drops in the metagame before pulling out their Oculus. It's still the typical cheating out the Oculus potentially on turn 2, turn 3, but you still have ways to have early game threats. And then you also have the Pixie decks with the Hopeless Nightmare. You need to find a way to deal with that early in the game. Otherwise, your opponent is just going to keep bouncing on and off, and then you're going to start running out of gas. So that's why the Lockdown is very crucial in this metagame. So again, this deck is very powerful to pick up, especially if you're a big fan of knowing how the metagame works and how the cards work. If you're that super knowledgeable in how the metagame works, Jeskai Control is the deck for you. So pros and cons is very versatile interaction. As you saw at the list of the cards that you've seen earlier, it's super powerful and potent. It's much consistent compared to the blue-white variant where you have to rely on Jace to win the game, or even Beza. This deck even still has Beza, but not relying too heavily on that card. Rather, you have cards like Shiko and Jeskai Revelation to finish out the game. Great matchups in a lot of aggro decks, token decks, even the controlled, or rather the combo decks, like the Blue White Omniscience deck is still very popular in some of the metagame shares. The cons, though, is it's a very complex deck, especially with 3 colors. The deck still suffers from the consistency of adding more colors into the deck, meaning it gets more complicated to play. So if you're not careful with playing your land drops carefully or sequencing them in the right way, you'll definitely end up choking on mana. That's why it's heavily relying on cards such as Stock Up to help fix your mana curve, and then later start casting your powerful spells. So, and it's very vulnerable to hand disruption. Of course, black is the number one enemy of this deck. If you get duress, that's pretty much like 2 steps behind on the game because your opponent has perfect information. So you're gonna have to play around that as well. That's the takeaway of playing this deck. And of course, it's a control deck, which means it's going to take some time to win the game. But of course, compared to the previous control decks in old standard, this is way much faster with the new cards making it stronger than ever. So final thoughts, it's a very powerful control deck. This is the deck to play right now in standard, or rather the control deck. People are shying away from the blue-white variant because the metagame is too fast. It's too hostile with all the aggro decks running around. So definitely you need to hedge your way with into those matchups with some of these powerful cards such as Lightning Helix, the lockdowns, and then casting him again with the Shiko. You need some recursion plus an extra body that's like super value, especially if you're trying to delay the game even further. So if you want to check this deck list, it's right on the screen. It's also at Goldfish, where I got the deck list, which was won by Soul Strong. It got second place in the standard challenge with an 8-2 record. Very impressive. So definitely, if you're a big fan of control decks, you definitely have to look at this list or this archetype moving forward. So that's the deck list, or rather, the top deck of the week for Magic. Let's move on to One Piece and Vanguard.
I seriously thought this was just gonna be Azorius Control with Corey Steel Cutter.
That could be a way to play it.
Anyways, here we go with One Piece TCG, starting off with a very fast deck. Red, Yellow, Betty, once again, showing up in the metagame. So, of course, what is this deck? It's hit hard, hit fast. Bello Betty is not a new leader, but rather has found a niche in the current metagame. In a meta of 6K leaders, of course, number one being blue purple Luffy and red purple Luffy and green purple Luffy. What matters is living long enough to summon strong creatures or to flood the board as fast as possible while hitting 6K, which is what Betty does best. So using leader skill, discarding one card, you choose 3 characters with revolutionary army type or trigger, and then they gain plus 3,000 power. So hitting the 6,000 threshold easily. So, of course, you have a lot of trigger cards here, such as Bello Betty, forgot that one, Kuma, and Lindbergh. You flood the board with free calls from your trigger effect. So, all of your life cards basically can be easily called from the trigger effect. And, of course, you have a lot more of free calls. And using cards such as Sabo, who is that? Koala, and what's his name again?
Ivankov.
Ivankov, yeah, Ivankov.
I recognize the the cape.
Yeah, they have a lot of free calls, making this easily a very swarmy deck. So pros, early call, easy power gain from the leader. Karasu, which is one of the cards that is very powerful in this deck, it gives minus 1,000 power to the opponent's leader, and it stacks for each Karasu on the field. So if you have 4, it's minus 4,000. Yeah, and you have super big power. Cons, of course, discarding one card per turn can spiral out fast, making you lose hand advantage quickly or even board advantage. And of course, it only does one thing good, which is rushing. You don't expect anything else from this deck, and very susceptible to board control. So lastly, it's a deck that has found a perfect time to re-enter the format. Bello Betty can easily disseminate slow decks with its fast and hard hitting attacks. However, very susceptible to losing to itself due to discarding one card per turn and very dependent on its board. However, this deck is still a very strong aggro deck and has easily won a lot of flagships and even regionals early in the metagame. So I think this would be a perfect time to play this deck during flagship at the end of the month here in Top the Games on the 29th.
Right, which is coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon this week.
Okay, here we go. Vanguard top deck of the week is Bavsargra Aksaya. Finally, we have new cards in, in the deck log. Okay, so what's new? Bavsargra is back with a new and powerful upgraded form. Aksaya can equip arms card from the drop zone to herself, allowing you to mix and match which arms you need for specific situations. So basically, her arms give her additional skills depending on what is equipped to her. Additionally, her new sword and shield is a massive buff to her offensive and defensive potentials. Sagara also gets a card draw and an attack extender rolled into one. Yugmashad allows you to draw 2 cards when it appears and also gives the deck much needed reach to close out games. So the strengths here is Bavsagara's ability to equip arms cards allows you the space to run more tech for specific matchups. Since this does not count as play an order for the turn, you can play under their arms and activates her own effects. Also, Bavsagara's older support in Bylord gives your front row plus 10k power when boosting. Combine this with the new sword, the Divaya, and Persona Ride, and you reach disgusting amounts of power. Also, Bavsagara's Ride Line searches and discards arms from your deck, compressing your deck and making sure your hand isn't clogged with cards with little to no shield value. So, weaknesses here is the deck is still reliant on setting up your Trick Moons and Bylords to close out your games. The deck can feel really weak when neither of these cards are available. Also, Yugmashad is the only way to close out games with this deck. Make sure to not play it down until necessary because the deck has no way to recycle this card once it is removed. And lastly, despite the deck's ride line being able to remove the arms card from the deck, arm cards can still clog the hand. Do not hesitate to discard them, especially if you have multiples. So final thoughts here is one of the more powerful decks to be released in BT07 due to its absurd power and potential for multi-attacks. deck needs to set up Bylord for absurd power lanes, but it is not necessary to win, and it will be potentially be hit in the future, as this has already been a victim of the recent ban list in Japan. So be cautious if you plan on building this deck, although it's still tier 1 despite being hit. So that's it
Oh wow.
for ban
Yeah,
cards.
That means that's a pretty good deck, if you ask me. Like getting hit with the ban list, and it's still tier one. What the hell? What kind of deck is that? Anyways, thank you for that, G Bro number 2. Let's move on to the last segment, which is Judge Call. Take it away, Carl. All right. Oh, well, that was a weird interaction right there. Anyways, judge call for this week, starting off with Magic. We got a very spicy judge call right here. Starting off with Jetro casting Back for More that says return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. When you do, it fights up to one target creature you don't control. So Jetro cast Back for More, targeting Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. That says all elves gain Force Walk, and elves cannot be target of spells or abilities. So it returns to the battlefield. Then he declares Paul's Llanowar Elves has his target to fight with Eladamri. What happens?
You cannot. It won't fight because the reflexive trigger is on the stack and Elunari is already in the field and therefore has hexproof.
All right, thank you for that easy answer right there, G Bro number 1. Yeah, you are correct. Because Eladamri has already given the ability to Llanowar Elves. When it returns, the reflexive trigger basically prevents the fight from happening. So this is the visual representation of how the stack works when you cast Back for More. So Back for More enters the stack, returns Eladamri. When it resolves, it creates a reflexive delayed triggered effect, which triggers after Eladamri enters the battlefield. So it goes on the stack again, trying to find a target for Eladamri to fight a creature that Jetro does not control. Unfortunately, Llanowar Elves is an elf, which also gains Shroud from Eladamri's effect. So, which means it is not a legal target. So, basically, nothing happens after that. So, therefore, he has no legal target with Back for More, and the stack is, or rather, the stack is resolved. So, the ruling is based on CR 603.12. That is the definition of the reflexive trigger, which says a resolving spell or ability may allow or instruct a player to take an action and create trigger abilities that triggers. These are wordings that say when a player does or doesn't take an action, or when something happens this way and then another thing happens. Those are called reflexive triggered abilities, which will create delayed trigger abilities. So that is the definition. If you're confused on how it works, again, you can review this ruling there, or you can read this ruling again in the VODs. So, yep, there you have it. That's the judge call for Magic Gathering. Let's move on to One Piece and Cardfight Vanguard.
Okay, here we go. This is gonna be a very long one. If you just read it properly, it will make sense. So Anjo only has 2 Sabos on the field, which says when attacking once per turn, if you have 3 or more rested characters, draw 1. So he declares an attack with both of them. So there are only 2 rested cards during this time. He then calls Mihawk OP10-029, which says if this enters or on play, if you have 2 or more rested characters, set up to one of your rested Odyssey characters with a cost of 5 or less as active. So basically, you restand it. And it enters rested because of Lim's effect, the leader, and uses the effect to set 1 Sabo as active. So when Sabo attacks a second time, there are now 3 rested characters, which are the 2 Sabos and the recently played Mihawk. So, will Anjo be able to draw a card from Sabos when attacking effect?
Oh, that's a very tricky question. I would say yes, because the trigger hasn't resolved yet. I would say, if that's the definition, when attacking it, that would be how I would read it. Unless I'm wrong, there could be a chance where he already missed the trigger after attacking. But I would go for yes, he would still be able to draw a card
Oh,
because it says once per turn, so which means it hasn't happened yet.
okay, let's see. So the answer is actually no.
No.
Sabo initially tried to activate the effect during the first instance of its attack, which is said here when attacking is a keyword indicated that the activation timing is fulfilled and an effect activates when you declare an attack during the attack step. And the next is effects text may include if, and as long as that clause is not fulfilled, the effects under the if clause will not be resolved. So the effect failed to resolve because there are less than because the if clause, that if you have three or more rested characters clause, was not fulfilled. So basically it entered into the stack in Magic terms and did not resolve because there are not three rested characters. Hence, during the second attack declaration, the effect was already used because it automatically enters into the stack because it doesn't say may. So as long as you just attack and it checks if you have three or more rested. So since it was already used, it will no longer activate due to the once per turn clause or once per turn effect.
All right, so it's much stricter in One Piece where it already checks the effect
Yeah.
right away. So there is a chance for you to miss out those effects. All right. So thank you for that, G bro. Let's move on to Vanguard.
Okay, so Brial has Sealed Blaze of Arbitration. Bavsagra Axaya has his Vanguard, which says this unit is also regarded as Sealed Blaze Maiden Bavsagra. His opponent activates the effect a Divine Skill of Blankmire, negating all of the effects of Axaya until end of the turn. What happens when during his turn, Brial attempts to play Blaze Hammer Soria and arm it to Bavsagra Asaya? So Soria says, Bavsagra, deity arms, seal blaze maiden, Bavsagra. So it's basically looking for the specific name there. And
Oh,
then
not again. We've been through this already. Where? This opponent activates divine. I'm not sure how this will work.
oh, that's right.
I think, yeah, this is quite confusing. I want to know the answer.
Here, so the answer here is when Brian will play the hammer, Surya, it will check if there is a sealed blaze maiden of Sagra in the Vanguard circle to arm itself too. As Axaya's effect is negated, it does not have the name of sealed blaze maiden of Sagra. As there are no cards with a specified name, Surya will then be sent to the drop zone instead. So it fulfills the condition of having played an order card for the turn, but it does not equip itself because the required name of Sealed Blaze Maiden of Sagra is not on the Vanguard circle.
Mhm. All right. So very, very tricky questions right here, and quite relevant, I would say, diba? Especially in some tournaments. If this deck is definitely going around. Yep, that's it for our stream. Hoping to see you guys next week for another episode of TD Talks, TD Bapo with the G Bros of 1 and 2. We'll be signing off. Peace out. See you next week, guys. Bye bye.